In this part of the video, we focus on city services being provided to citizen, and in an ICT solution perspective, the end customer being actually the citizens and not the city who's ordering the software. The problem with the current mainstream approach is that service-focused approach from the service provider's perspective. It also leads the ICT systems being designed and form a system-centered perspective, where every new thing that enters to the system either finds its place on existing systems or is one part of motivating yet another system to be introduced, and the whole big picture remains as the question mark in the center. Employee's perspective to this kind of combination of system is something like this. Based on what the employee is doing, he is dealing with separate siloed systems depending on the task what he is trying to do. Citizen's perspective for the same kind of system, combination of system, is something like this. It's through whatever the city decides to publish. Of course, the stuff comes partially from the ERP and CRM systems as well, but they are still served from the dedicated publication services. Let's bring back to the city's actual focus. City services are for citizens. City employee, although in there presented as a separate, he or she has multiple roles as providing the city's services, meaning that that's why his roles also span across the systems. The employee of the citizen is also a citizen. The employee of the city is also a citizen of a city. And a citizen also, regardless of whether he or she is employee of the city, has multiple roles as requiring or requesting the services from the city. So the combination of the roles and the employees and citizens looks something as confusing as this. Siloed systems don't recognize the roles, and even less the combination of roles. So what's about the combination then? Let's approach this through the change. Perspective adjustments towards the true role of the city. So, what about the roles? We are proposing a perspective change from a user role driven approach towards the real world citizen as a one human being. It means that from this basis, perspective needs to be individual citizen bound. It is because citizen is using and providing services in multiple roles, and citizens' all personal roles have the impact of the available services and thus the kind of personal view of those services. Then let's expand the city just a bit more of how citizen experiences it. Nobody is just a citizen. It means that if we are to craft a personal based view, private sector services must be in the view. It means that all the business, not only the privatized public services, but the whole sector, all private businesses. Non-profit NGOs must be in the view. They offer, for instance, children's hobbies are often driven with these kind of organizations who primarily aim for providing the service, driven really heavily on the volunteer work. They must be in the view so that their services are to be found and be used. And last point to underline, everybody and everything must be allowed into the view. It must not be blocked by any kind of subjective selection, any kind of decision making, who's worthwhile to be presented as our city's service provider and who's not. As long as the laws are applied properly, if somebody can put up a business, his or her business must be allowed into the view. The biggest claim why this is important is that the innovation is blocked if it cannot emerge on a completely irrelevant looking business. Often other business that touch the actual citizen are enabled when some kind of infrastructural like businesses emerge. First they serve something existing, but then they can start to provide completely new and first irrelevant lookalike services into the view, which then allow the real businesses that touch up to the citizen level to be built on top of the services. So then let's cover the means and especially the benefits by recognizing the city's true role and functionality and let it open up and expand towards its citizens. The key enabler how this can be pulled off in an ICD is the recognizing that the citizen's data belongs to that citizen. It means that instead of having siloed systems dealing with the medical data and keeping it inside, even though it's still within those systems, the controlling point should be the one that owns the information. Another example is the personal calendars of the people who are never in the city's system. However, only the combination of these things start to wrap up real benefits to the individuals. Let's put up an example of children's hobbies. On a right side we have a Chris citizen who's on his own home city. He has on his schedule children's hobbies on the average year. On the left side we have Sandy summer citizen, where there's an important part of children's holiday hobbies, especially when they are looking to be found something to be provided in their summer cottage area. And on many cities the summer tourism is really key driver of driving the city's economics, so it's really beneficial to be able to provide the services, personalized services based on confidential private data to these summer citizens. So the migration from the current silos is actually relatively simple. Let's put a logical information management platform in the center. And why we would want to put another or additional system over the distributed systems that we already underlined that there's a problem. What's the role of this information management platform is to recognize the owners of the information when the integration is made already between the systems. So it's kind of just inserting the need to find the information owners when the stuff is pulled off from the ERP to be published for a digital services web portal. What does it mean that when that kind of platform is introduced, we suddenly can start to provide individual citizen bound views? It means that from the city's provided public transport schedules, which are completely open, can be joined with very private calendar and very private doctor's appointment, and for instance very private where am I now, my current very detailed location, which all these private parts are really confidential data and can barely be put on the Google's latitude kind of service, but would be much safer to be in a completely controlled private storage of my control. It means that from that kind of platform it could drive my view and my selection of apps. So how can we build that kind of a platform? Let's wrap up how it can be done through the benefits so that it's economically sustainable business-wise based model, how it can actually reduce the costs. The key differentiating factor is that the person owns the information. The citizen owns his own information. He or she is allowed to decide which service apps he wants to run against that information. Second part, why it can be pulled off, is that it needs to be open source, completely open, neutral party auditable platform that covers the privacy and security. It's kind of analogous to web browser where the domains cannot hack the other domains. the scripting cannot access anything but the main domain when it came from. Another example is the mobile devices, where the apps request the permissions when they are installed and they cannot break the permissions later on. So if an app is not given network permission at all, it cannot access the network. Applied to here, it means that these kind of MyView provided apps, service apps that are run in for example in the city's own servers within the security context of some citizen, apps can be made by anyone. They will be ran in a secured sandbox where they don't hack the city's other systems, but they don't even hack the person's information. They cannot leak the information, nor they can corrupt it. So they can just process and refine the information. And you can think of it like an open data interfaces, except that because we underline that everybody should be allowed to be entering the view, interface creation and modification is basically rapid if it's driven with an automation accelerated reference architectures. This is a part of geek talk from the software side, but it can be done in very productive manner. And same thing with the apps. The apps are actually quite small when they don't have to deal with authentication and integration mechanics. They just input information and output information, and then provide, for instance, reports and views out of it, which is the clue. The third point then comes that when the apps provide the views, cities own need to produce and pay for the kind of citizen-tailored ICT solutions is dramatically reduced. The cost may drop to a fraction, but it can easily drop to a half when city services are served in addition or in parallel and together with private sector offerings that are delivering the apps, because the private sector apps will then take care of the user interface side, which is easily a half of the work for the actual end service that's brought to web browser or mobile device for the citizen. And this basically happens because of the 2 points above. So when the person owns the information, he or she can also sell it in a various ways to be used by the private sector offerings for more detailed services being provided. The last part here is that the technical framework of the platform is actually quite light. All the elements, technical elements, and actually the investment targets that the current projects invest to are already there. When a new ICT system is currently built for the city, it includes much more than this kind of frame in between, because every complete solution already includes the data storage, the network transfer parts, and all that stuff. If the perspective change is applied, which is now missing, one current investment can be substantial part of the whole platform being built, and which brings that the possibility is that the private sector actually creates the platform if there is a big enough city with a big enough kind of potential consumer base by opening the data. And this happens because the private sector simply is crafting their solutions in the reference way that the city mandates and requires if they want to run their apps in the city's servers. So it means that basically it could also be required that the first 10 providers also contribute to building the frame, and then they get subsidized the cost for that frame for the newcomers that enter to provide their apps to the customers. But basically the public sector just needs to mandate the possibility to do this kind of a thing. Then wrapping up of the benefits of this kind of a platform over the traditional siloed model. Platform's model for apps favors small, and that means usually more local ICT companies than the big siloed approach. There are much more small companies in the world than those that are qualified enough to be an ERP system providers. It means also that open, because the platform and its interfaces are open, it also means that it will encourage and spread the open development. It means that somebody who builds the service for some particular city will also be offering it likely elsewhere. It means that cities moving to this kind of perspective change cannot kind of benefit for getting all the goods for their city for free. But it also means that I mean even from the local companies, but also other elsewhere happening development will return the benefits to the city as well. So if the cities stay in sync together, that they kind of keep the platforms compatible enough, or are actually using exactly the same platform core, it means that all the solutions from various cities are completely compatible with other cities. Early adopters and leading ICT companies get the benefit if they are local bound, because they have familiar ground of problems. Their solutions aim better to the local needs of citizens than some completely outsider. However, it does even in the other end of the case. If local ICT components cannot raise or cannot provide the same level of services that other outside bound ICT companies, they have the means to penetrate to the market, and essentially the citizens and cities' productivity benefits. So this kind of model cannot artificially favor the local ICT companies. They get their kind of competitive edge of understanding the local issues probably better than complete outsiders, but they cannot kind of be completely out of the game and still remain there providing the services. Especially because we can always include the cooperation model that's on the last bullet. Locals can and will likely become channel partners to close the gap. So if there's somebody who understands local problems but is lacking the competitiveness to actually create the solution, that company is likely to partner up with those who provide the actual solution. That's the end of the city scenario. The city can be easily changed to be any kind of other authority who drives from the perspective of their own scope, and it can be also widened because the citizens of a city are also citizens, or they also belong to a government of a country, and from the country's perspective, cities are important kind of service providers for the government services. And same applies for individual companies as well. Healthcare sector alone could look for their customers through the one perspective where they combine, instead of siloed systems, a combination of other service providers. So the information platform that we here kind of position in the center of cities' siloed services can also be expanded to a wider scope to combine these kind of cross-organizational services under one huge information platform. We have other material and video coming up for this part as well. Thanks for listening.